We got some content to get to on a Friday. Zach Lowe talked about the Charlotte Hornets, and he gave you reasons as to why you should be watching this team this year. Plus, CBS, they put out another top 100 player list. Fall, it's here. Basketball is fast approaching. Let's get to it all today. Locked On Hornets.
Warning, warning, warning. Yeah. There's a tornado, and I don't know if that helps or not.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I repeat, that's 2 days away from now. That's 2 days away from September 20th. So get in on the action, FanDuel.com. Get there to get started. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You may have heard of it. It's his Substack. You can follow him on Twitter at Doug Branson, LOH. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ. Ever heard of that? 12 to 3, Wes and Walker. Sports Radio 92.7 FM. Yeah, man, I think people heard you when you were saying, you know what, when you walk outside and it feels good, like it's not even false fall. Like we're starting to get to legitimate fall these days. And I'm pulling up my phone and I got the Hornets-centric notifications that are popping up that allow me to know when the content drops. And the content is another top 100 list. Thank you, ESPN. Now thank you, CBS, with another top 100 list. We can get to that in just a moment as well. But also Zach Lowe talking about the Hornets. Like in the middle of the season, you don't hear a lot about Charlotte. I'm hoping that we hear more about Charlotte outside of just the franchise being the butt of a bunch of jokes. But when these national podcasters talk about the Hornets, it's usually in some kind of preview episode. So that's another sign that the season is fast approaching. And that's what happened with Zach Lowe talking about this team in his latest edition of his podcast.
Yeah, he had Steve Jones Jr. on, and they did a lengthy segment. Basically, the whole podcast was around reasons to watch all of these sort of bottom-feeding teams or teams that maybe were not going to be super contenders in the playoffs. And so, both of them talked about the fact that the Hornets could be fringe playoff contenders. Zach Lowe said you mess around and someone above you takes an injury, you're accidentally in the 10th seed. They talked a lot about LaMelo Ball. They said that, he's an electric playmaker, needs growth in his shot selection and his patience. They really kind of dug into his game. Defensively, Zach Lowe said, he was talking to Steve Jones Jr. He said, you mentioned make a leap. I would just settle for just guard your man. Just guard your dude. Like, don't ruin us. And obviously, they both agreed that it's a big, big year for LaMelo Ball because of the injuries, because, everyone in his draft class is starting to, pull away in terms of progression, particularly Anthony Edwards. And then on Brandon Miller, Zach Lowe loves him some Brandon Miller. He said, really excited about Brandon Miller. Just the whole package, size, ball handling, shooting, the outlines of a really, really good all-star level, all-around player are here. So they had a lot of love for the top players. They obviously mentioned the depth issues, some of the talent issues around Charlotte as well. But I'm interested, Walker, what was the most interesting thing you heard from this podcast about the Charlotte Hornets?
That the fun seems to be coming back.
Yeah.
It used to be here. They used to be a league pass team and possibly the best league pass team out there. When LaMelo Ball was healthy, he was going into an all-star season. You had high-flying Miles Bridges. You had connector Gordon Hayward that was just able to stabilize some things. But you actually had some real talent, and this was a team that finished above 500 a few years ago to get to the play-in. And remember, they were actually like a top 4 seed pretty deep into the season, surprisingly deep into the season. Even if you would have picked them to lose a first-round series, even at that moment in time, you still knew this was a fun basketball team to watch. The problem with the Hornets, it's not only that they've been bad. It's not only that they've been a bottom feeder and that they've been out of the play-in altogether. It's that they also haven't been fun to watch. It's been no LaMelo, which means not a lot of fast pace, which means Steve Clifford basketball, not turning it over and defending at a high level, being small, getting dunked on, you not being the team that dunks on other squads anymore. Even Miles Bridges, who was fun, out for a year, comes back, settles for a lot of mid-range jumpers, no Mark Williams to catch lobs, no anything really. Nick Smith Jr., a fun basketball player when he's hitting, you don't even get a lot of minutes from him just because he's not quite ready. Like the fun seems to be coming back as long as everyone stays healthy. But the fun seems to be coming back, and nationally, it seems like people are realizing it. You know, Zach Lowe mentioning not only LaMelo being here right now, being healthy in the offseason, which is a big deal. Remember when Steve Clifford told us real late that he had only been cleared like a week or two before training camp? LaMelo having a full offseason, we love to see that. But also, it is the NBA Cup court that had a leak yesterday. The Cup court looks pretty sweet.
Looks nice.
It's the teal. It's Eric Collins. The fun seems to be coming back. I don't know if we were doing a weather warning or watch where we had all the conditions set to where maybe this could happen, to where, no, this is here. I've seen it. It's just a matter of when it hits you. We have fun watch right now. I don't know if we have a warning, but I'm hoping that we get to see the fun hit us, and that's what excites me the most.
Yeah, the idea of the Charlotte Hornets is the weather forecast is partly tasty with a chance of fun. Because I don't think we can say definitively that the fun is back, because there are.
It's not a warning. It's absolutely a watch right now.
Yeah. That's right. And producer Katie often gets those two mixed up, watch and warning. She thinks watch means that a tornado is on top of us, and that warning,
somebody watched it. You know, like somebody.
Well, that's the confusion, and I'm like. I'm trying to like help her, and I say, no, like it's like, watch out, there might be a tornado. Warning, 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 there's a tornado. And I don't know if that helps or not. But anyway,
I don't know.
I don't think that we can definitively declare the fun is back, because there are too many question marks about who's going to play for how long, and you do have this Charles Lee factor. We don't know how he's going to be as a first-year head coach. We have a lot of optimism about it, but is he going to be able to maintain the fun factor while also getting this team, and particularly its top stars in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, to commit fully, or in LaMelo's case, as Zach Lowe mentioned, just partially on the defensive end? Just don't ruin us on the defensive end. Can you keep up the high-octane offense while getting them to commit to getting back on defense? Because it's not about moving fast going, in transition offensively. It's about getting back in transition defense, which has killed them defensively when LaMelo's been healthy and when he hasn't been healthy. So that's in the air. And then what's also in the air is something else that they mentioned on this podcast, Zach Lowe in particular, saying, look, they may have the potential to be a 10th seed, but also they have this lottery-protected first-round pick for the next draft that belongs to the San Antonio Spurs. And if they get into the play-in and become a threat to get into the playoffs, does this team at some point, the front office and the ownership, reevaluate how much they want to win before that trade deadline, because they've got options in terms of trading Vasa Micic, in terms of playing more of their first-round pick, Tijan Salon. They've got options to make this team like sneakily a little worse and keep that first-round pick. Yeah. So my question would be, how much of a factor should that first-round pick play in keeping them in or out of the playoffs?
I mean, it has to play a factor. I'm going to go on just like, it's not going to be too emotional, but it's going to be a little mini rant here, because this pick has felt a lot like the lingering effects of the Nick Batum contract, where it just freaking won't go away. It refuses to go away. At the time that the Hornets decided to trade up to go get Kai Jones, everyone loved the idea of having so much protection on it that if you needed your lottery pick, you were going to get it, which was great. But as I mentioned a million times, I don't think people thought about it enough. It took away a controlled pick for you to use at trade deadlines. And now here it is showing up in a different way, where now you might not want to succeed at the highest level possible because you want this pick back. So not only did trading up for Kai Jones not work in the sense that Kai is off the roster, but it also is working against you in that you haven't had a pick that you could trade. And now it might keep us from actually getting to the play-in and then getting to the playoff, because we don't want to give that pick up to the San Antonio Spurs. Nick Batum wouldn't leave after the waive and stretch provision. We decided, no, we want to pay him $10 million the next 3 years. It feels like this pick will not go away, and it is affecting this is the fun affecting thing that can take everything away. The cherry on top, the dollop of whipped cream on your sundae. Nope, gone. You don't get a play-in. You don't get a playoff. We got to keep this pick. We got to suck a little longer so we can keep our first-round talent.
And it's not – I don't even think it's about keeping the opportunity to take someone, 11, 12, 13, whatever, like a late lottery pick. I don't even think it's and I honestly don't even think it's about the opportunity to be so bad that you get those odds at a Cooper flag. I think it's about more keeping the asset alive, and when you get to draft time, being able to offer 4 first-round picks.
It all matters.
Instead of 3
right?
first-round picks, if you're really interested in winning, in the next decade, to make that Mikal Bridges type of deal. Now you do have some assets from Miami, from Dallas, from different places that you can package together, but you have to have first-round picks, and so keeping those vital. Despite all of that, though, Walker, guess what?
What's up?
I disagree with you, and I will tell you why. Next.
I don't even know. I just went on a mini rant. About the pick. I don't even know if I really answered your question, so maybe I attempt to answer the question as well. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We'll get to more of Zach Lowe's thoughts, plus we have a CBS Top 100 player list to get to. Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball. We'll focus on them as well, the stars on this team. Coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something different for you now through September 22nd. This is the last time I will be able to make you this offer, because when we come back, we're coming back on Monday, and that will not be September 22nd. That will be September 23rd. Get in on the action, folks. It's this weekend, or you miss out on your opportunity. All FanDuel customers by September 22nd can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. If you're a Panther fan and you want to bet on Andy Dalton making this a fun team to watch, okay, but if it's not, then you're not going to get an opportunity to watch out-of-market games. Take advantage of this thing. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, Doug, you said you disagreed with me. You were going to share with the people. I'm interested, too, because I'm not sure what you disagree with me on.
Perfect.
I don't know if I answered your second question. I heard about the pick, and I have real problems with that trade, especially in hindsight. So I don't even know what you're disagreeing with me on.
That's perfect. That's how I win most arguments. When people don't know what the argument is, when they don't know what I'm disagreeing with, that I'm 100%. I'm perfect on those arguments.
How are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. I disagree, and here's why.
Wait, I didn't even. What did I? Okay. So what I asked you was how big of a factor that should be, and by your answer, I take it that you feel like that should be a really big factor in determining whether or not they should continue to win or lose, depending on the circumstances. Obviously, right? If they are 10 games above 500 going into the trade deadline, they're going to push the gas pedal and get LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller more playoff experience, or any postseason experience for Brandon Miller's sake. But what if they are 5 games under 500 heading into that break? What if they're 10 games under 500? Like, what's the threshold that they would say, all right, let's pump the brakes, let's trade a few guys, let's get a little worse, let's play some younger guys in the back half? And honestly, and I'm going to upset some of the people that are in the Sam Presti priesthood, that have like shrines to Presti, who are all about going to the church of acquiring assets. But I understand the importance of first round picks and packaging those together, as I said before the break. At the same time, I think your absolute #1 goal this season and every season that comes next is getting LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller postseason experience as quickly as possible, and doing whatever it takes. Obviously, there's a limit to that. If they are, maybe 10, maybe 15, I just have to feel out where the Eastern Conference is, and play it all through context. But if you are within any striking distance of getting into that play-in, not playoffs, even just knocking on the door of a play-in, I think you have to go for it and get these guys postseason experience. It's just so important, not only for those players. Like, it's obviously important for LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and Mark Williams and all these young guys to feel that pressure, to understand what that's like. And the franchise obviously feels that way because they had all of those guys in to see, the championship celebration in an awkward kind of way and to meet their new head coach, Charles Lee, in the Boston locker room. But it's also important for this franchise, as they're evaluating their own talent, to see how these guys do underneath the brightest lights, the pressure cooker of the playoffs, particularly if it's a playoff series, because then you get to see some of that chess match. It's just when you hear players, when you hear coaches talk about the playoffs, they talk about how much different the game is. I think the fact that P.J. Washington never got into the playoffs hurt his value because teams couldn't see how he played in those moments, how he changed his game from regular season mode to postseason mode. Understanding that can better allow you to say, all right, this guy needs to go, this guy needs to stay. And it's surprising sometimes the guys you think like, oh, well, this guy obviously is not a factor for this team, role player type guys, all of a sudden become extremely important to your team, like Derek White for the Boston Celtics. Like, that's not a guy 2 years ago that you would have thought, oh, that guy is just a pillar of a franchise. And he's turned into that guy because of postseason performance. That has to be the number one goal. Forget about this pick. Okay, maybe you could get just an extra level of player, but maybe you can't because, the market is competitive. So forget about the pick and focus on another P word, playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know if I completely disagree with you. I think I put more stock into the pick, though, because you mentioned somebody like Derek White, some of these role players that become real valuable to their team. I think of Derek Lively, a role player that became really important to his team. How did the Mavericks acquire him? It's because they did the ultimate tank job when they could have gone for it to get to the play-in tournament. They didn't. They get a pick. They select Derek Lively. Lively, a monster piece for that squad. They get to the NBA Finals. It's a real thing you have to consider. I don't disagree with you because I do value the playoffs. I do think also that Luka Doncic had been to a Western Conference Finals at that time, so you could argue that these are not apples-to-apples comparisons. I understand that as well. But Derek Lively, if you're the Mavericks, would you choose, well, yeah, maybe we should have gone for the play-in tournament and playoff, and then we'd sacrifice Lively for that? You wouldn't. And I know you're not guaranteed that impact role player, but you have to consider it, especially with an NBA draft class like this that is considered so deep, and now you just add more talent to this. But ultimately, Doug, honestly, I think I'm considering it more than you are. But again, I don't necessarily disagree because I do think it's valuable for LaMelo and Brandon to get to the postseason and have that experience.
Yeah, if this team had been, I think it's less about LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and more about the fact that this team has no way to evaluate the full depth of this roster because they haven't been tested at all. And if this team had been healthy for the past 2 years, maybe I'd be more on the spectrum towards your end of the spectrum of, caring about wanting to get postseason experience, but also caring about the pick. But I'll just tell you right now, I don't give two shakes about that first round pick. It can go to San Antonio for all I care. I don't care. I just want to make the postseason.
I want to make the postseason too. I do. I don't know. This damn pick, it's why I hate it. It's why I hate it. This damn trade for Kai Jones. It's not even that Kai Jones didn't work out. It's just the whole process and the protections. And now I'm going to feel the missing out of it, especially, Doug, especially if the Hornets get destroyed in the play-in tournament and they're out and they lose by 30. I can't take that. Let me tell you right now. If they sacrifice, and I guess at that point they would get the pick, so it would be damage not done at that point. But if they get to a playoff series, that probably enhances your argument. If you get to a playoff series, you're guaranteed 4 games of meaningful basketball with a couple of home games, right? Like that matters a lot. So you would dodge the play-in blowout without a first-round pick attached to it. So, yeah, if you got to a playoff series, that would be real valuable.
Okay, so let me tell you quickly the most interesting thing that I heard from Zach Lowe and Steve Jones Jr. on this podcast, and it was about our Lord and Savior LaMelo Ball and Zach Lowe loving him some LaMelo Ball, but with a caveat that he would like him to go, from Carnival basketball to Carnival basketball. He's tired of the carnivalism. So let me read you this quote. I just cannot quit him as an engine of a good NBA offense because I say this over and over again. You just cannot find a lot of guys who are 6'7", can shoot a very nice percentage on very hard threes off the dribble, and have vision like this, like one of the 10 to 12 best, most creative passers in the NBA. Now, is he something of a Carnival act at times? Yes, absolutely. And he has to shed that carnivalism, that Carnival-esque aspect of his game if the Hornets are going to get serious. But this is a team that's been in the play-in with LaMelo. He's already proven to some degree that he can be the number one option on a decent NBA team. So that, very interesting to me as we get another pundit saying, hey, I believe in this guy, but he has to get more serious, not just on the defensive end of the floor, but on the offensive end of the floor where we still see him take some shots, 0, 1 pass, pull up, deep three, contested, or weird layups where like there was an easier player, an easier pass to make. He's got to work some of that stuff out of his game because when he misses those shots, Walker, he gets frustrated. When he misses the ones that seem like, all right, those were good shots to take, he doesn't get all that frustrated. It's when he goes into that mode that he gets frustrated, then fouls, and it all just cascades, and they end up losing to Detroit, 9 times a season.
You could use the Carnival Act description that Zach Lowe says and take that as derogatory towards LaMelo. And I think Zach, he's talked about this before. He's been on this. I mean, remember, he wrote a few things about LaMelo this offseason, right as the NBA season was ending, too, saying he was a Carnival act. And he was like, but I don't even necessarily mean that as a bad thing. He's been a really fun basketball player to watch. Lowe is a fan of LaMelo. Like, he actually pushes back on what other NBA writers will say and that he's an empty calories guy. We heard about Tim McMahon. We heard his take earlier this offseason saying that he's not a winning basketball player. His efficiency's terrible. His defense is terrible. No, Zach Lowe sees the value in what LaMelo could become. And then he goes to this Carnival Act stuff, right? Like, so again, the behind the back passes, the one-handed fireball passes to the corner, like those are fun. Like, I could give a frog's fat behind if he does that. Like, for me, I just want the efficiency and the efficiency too. Like, I'm with it, right? Like, I like the behind the back stuff, but for me, like, I just hope that we get to the free throw line. We can continue to like ascend on the 3-point line. Like, can we get back to what was like flirting with elite level shooting with LaMelo and just playing better defense. But I'm kind of with the behind the back passes. I'm kind of with the Carnival Act too. It's just, can you add the efficiency type shots in your repertoire as well and defensively get better? That's how you get to all NBA level, Doug. So I get where Zach is coming from, although I don't want him to lose the fun, right? Like the fun watch, it's here. We feel the behind the back passes still need to be a part of the game, in my opinion.
No, nobody wants the Carnival to go away. They just want LaMelo to go from Carnival act to ringleader. They want him, to be the guy that is, puppeteering everything, that is making sure that nobody gets eaten by a lion instead of the bearded lady. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want him to evolve from sideshow mode and get into ringleader mode on the court. I don't think, I think Brandon Miller is going to be helpful in that way. He can organize on the floor and off the floor, but you still need a little bit of maturity in that game, decision making. I mean, I was watching one of his better games last season against Dallas when he had like a 30-point triple-double, scored 23 points in the fourth quarter, and he scored 23 in the fourth quarter, and that was like memorable and great. And they ended up losing that game because Luka was just a little bit better. But I was watching that game, and there were moments at the beginning of the game that the Hornets had a chance to take control and lead for a vast majority of that game instead of like having to come back. And there were just moments where LaMelo was making decisions that you just didn't understand. That didn't make any sense on like just a basketball level. They just made sense from a LaMelo is uber confident and can make plays that others can't.
Yeah.
And it's the old adage from Jurassic Park. You were so concerned about what you could do, you didn't ask if you actually should do it. I know I butchered that quote, but that's the idea. It's like he can do stuff that nobody else can do, but is he often enough asking himself, should I actually do this? Is it for the betterment of the team and the offense that we're trying to execute here that I pull this off?
Yeah, the other thing, continuing Jurassic Park, LaMelo, He just finds a way. He finds a way to affect the game. And
Well, we've seen
Get rid of that.
First half, terrible LaMelo. Second half, just like
Chaos
wow.
theory. It's chaos theory.
Crazy.
It's Jeff Goldblum out there dribbling a basketball. That's what it is. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Let's focus on Brandon Miller a little more on the other side of this as the other top-notch player to discuss and the CBS Top 100 list. It's all coming up next, LOH. Time for the 100 list, the CBS Top 100 player list. We saw 3 players in the Hoops Hype list. They're pretty high, Doug. Like, it was LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Miles Bridges all in the top 70, if I'm not mistaken. So here with CBS, there's one player off of the list, which is a pretty big drop, even if you're talking about a different publication from, what was it, Miles was 68?
So in Hoops Hype, Miles was 67, Brandon was 58, LaMelo was 44. In CBS's Top 100, Miles goes unranked, Brandon Miller drops from 58 to 66. By my math, that is 8 spots. And LaMelo Ball, an even steeper drop. He goes from 44 all the way down to 58 on CBS's Top 100. CBS saying about LaMelo Ball, perhaps no player has captured the imagination of the younger generation of fans as much as Ball, who is a walking highlight reel. Unfortunately, new clips have been hard to come by in recent years, as Ball has played just 58 total games in the last 2 seasons. In an interview near the end of last season, he said he's considering wearing ankle braces moving forward, which will hopefully help him stay on the court and make his case as one of the league's best point guards. So 58 is a wait and see ranking.
Yeah, it is. And that's, Sam Vecini, when he was on the Athletic Pod talking about where to rank LaMelo, he said, I think there was some profanity, like, I don't know where the bleep to rank LaMelo or something like that. Then we have in Hoops Hype, they were a little more favorable. They were like, yeah, when LaMelo's out there, he's good. So we're going to favor and rank LaMelo how we would when he's healthy and playing basketball, which I understand. Look, I could get mad. I just can't right now. I can't get mad at these rankings. Like, if LaMelo is going to be in the middle, that's fine. I get people wanting to see him. And Brandon Miller, after just 1 year, I understand people having a wait and see type of role. The rankings I get mad at is when Brandon Miller is so clearly the third best rookie last year, with Chet and Wemby being only ahead of him. And yet Brandon somehow, being a second team all rookie member, or maybe even being off of a couple of people's all rookie teams, right? Those are the ranking. That's ridiculous enough for me to be angry with it. Here, if you're calling a second year player a top 60 player in the league, like, that's fine with me. Like, I'm with that. So yeah, Miles Bridges falling. Miles feels like a top 100 player too. So were you surprised to see Miles not even make it in the double digits?
I was, because I was and I wasn't. Like, I was from the perspective of, like, yeah, it feels like he's a top 100 player. Just like when you look at the pure production that not just last season, but even if you go back to the season prior to his getting charged with felony domestic violence, like those numbers, the raw numbers, would suggest that he's at least in the conversation for 100. Maybe he's not 66, which is where Brandon was in this one. Maybe he's not 67, which is where Hoops Hype had him. But I mean, when you look at the list, CBS Sports, Klay Thompson is 99. Like, Kyle Kuzma is 98, and Kyle Kuzma and Miles Bridges often compared to one another, and I think they're friends too. But like, I think I'm taking Miles over Kyle Kuzma. Bogdan Bogdanovic is 97. Lou Dortz is 96. Now, I will say this: the fact that Miles and Brandon and LaMelo and PJ Washington before him weren't in the playoffs, that's going to affect these rankings, because these are national pundits like James Herbert and Jack Maloney. And look, you can think these guys are dunderheads if you want, but they pay attention to this stuff. They pay attention to the playoffs. And so, I sound like the Indianapolis Colts coach right now. Playoffs. But like that's the situation. So that should be the motivation when you look at these rankings. If you're LaMelo Ball, if you're Brandon Miller, if you're Miles Bridges, and you care one iota about what other people think about you and where you're ranked in the NBA, then guess what? Wake up every morning and focus on how you're going to get the Charlotte Hornets to the postseason and win some postseason games.
That's how it goes. So if Miles is one interesting aspect of this because he falls out of a top 100 list compared to Hoops Hype where he was 67. That's a big time drop, man. Like that's a big one. Brandon Miller, like relatively ranked in the same area here. The rankings that I was talking about with the all rookie team stuff where there were a decent amount of people that had Brandon Miller as like a second team all rookie member, or Kendrick Perkins left Brandon Miller off of his list entirely. Now, he would say he apologized to him because he just completely forgot about Brandon, which we knew at the time anyways. Even with that being said, I do think that people are ready to see what Brandon Miller can do. I was looking at some basketball card rookie values, right? And this was in the last couple of years. I think Brandon Miller's rookie card is like the third or fourth most valuable. Gigi Jackson, oddly higher than Brandon, but like Brandon was fourth, I think, on that list. So people are ready. He's got the basketball world on notice, and I'm hoping that he can do enough to be considered for an all-star game. Like I think that is well within reason to expect for a high-end outcome, because we see that a decent amount. Guys that have really good rookie years, they improve so much their second season that they just get to their first ever all-star game. I think that's on the table for Brandon Miller.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, the fact that he goes from unranked to 66 in this CBS and is impressive. And James Herbert saying the ceiling is incredibly high, and that the 6'7" wing profiles is a franchise cornerstone, a guy who can create for himself and others, incredibly defend multiple positions. And going back to that Low Post podcast, they were kind of defending Brandon Miller's defensive missteps, and it's kind of sounded a lot like what I've heard from you a lot on this podcast, which is he had way more responsibility defensively than he probably deserved because so many guys were out. Yeah. Like he was having to do a lot more than even rookies who start, even like your top picks, even they have on the plate. He had it and was able to hang sometimes, and then obviously got exposed other times. Like you shouldn't have Brandon Miller guarding Jalen Brunson. Like that just as a rookie. I don't even know if that should happen this season. But, he had to do that at times. And so, people are willing to give him a break. And I think people are willing to give him a break because they've heard him talk and they've heard other people talk about him. And everything that's said about him and everything that comes out of his mouth really reinforces the fact that this guy works hard, that he wants it, and that he's going to do whatever it takes to improve all aspects of his game so that he can reach Paul George GOAT status.
GOAT status. Yes. Until then, man, we'll just have to continue to be these mini soldiers that defend all these Hornets, trying to fight for their place on the hierarchy within the NBA, climbing up all these rankings. And hopefully they're able to do it this year. The fun watch, it's on. The conditions are right, Doug. The conditions are right.
Looking out my window. Oh, please. Yeah. I see it. The skies are telling me. I'm reading the skies, and they're saying it's going to be good things for the Charlotte Hornets this season, folks. So you better stay tuned.
A big purple and teal cyclone. It's coming at you. Can't wait for it. That's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Go check him out on his Substack. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m., 92.7 FM. Have a great weekend. Remember, FanDuel, get in on the action, the NFL Sunday ticket offer that they have. By betting $5, you can get a really nice deal there. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.
Bye-bye.